is Women for Gun Rights with your host Amanda Suffolcool, part of the DC Project.
Hey folks, welcome to Women for Gun Rights, and tonight I have Stephannie Weidner, and she is the CEO of Active Self-Protection. You know those folks. They what is it, 10,000 gunfights or something like that. I think that's the first time I was ever introduced to what you guys do is that set of, what were they? It's a lecture series. And what was the true quantity? What did he call that?
At that time, we called it lessons learned from analyzing 10,000 gunfights. At this point, it's a little more than that. It's closer to 30, probably 35 at this point. So it grows exponentially by the month.
Well, yeah, because you guys, well, let's tell folks what active self-protection is.
Sure. So Active Self-Protection is at its heart a defensive training company. But if you've heard of us, you've probably heard of us from our social media arm, which basically means we have our main YouTube channel, as we call it. We break down lessons learned from watching defensive encounters that have been caught on tape, on badge cams or security cams or whatever it is. It's been caught on tape, and then we break them down. And we've analyzed these, at this point, it's been 30,000 different defensive encounters. After a few hundred, you start to realize that there's principles of violence that show up over and over and over again. And we've continued to see that. Our second channel is called Active Self-Protection Extra. We call our main channel our mindset channel, where you kind of learn and understand the problem of violence. And then our extra channel is our skill set channel, where you can go for training. We have some of the top lawyers in the country come on Friday to talk about the legal issues in John's briefs. We put training classes up there. Every Monday there's a lesson for either dry fire or live fire, pistol or rifle. Just all kinds of free training broken down into 15-minute chunks. We post every single day, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. There's always something that you can go learn there for free.
It's pretty darn amazing. I mean, I have had the opportunity to see and interact and train with some of the active self-protection instructors, and then see them just in different areas all over the country as to what they do, and they're pretty amazing. So what do you do to use to pick out who you bring into the active self-protection family? Because then I think it is a family when you're all done with it.
It really is, and that's a great question. And it's getting to be one that's a little more difficult for me to answer, because as the platform has grown, you start to find more and more people that approach you, kind of want something from you or want to use that platform in some way. And so it's a little more difficult to read people. Back at the beginning, when John was really the only face of the company and people didn't realize who I was, they would very often treat us very differently. They would treat him as the person that could do something for them one way, and me, the nobody, another way. And so people generally that treated us with some parity and equity, and treated me as someone that they didn't think could help them in any way very kindly, I took a much larger interest in them. At this point, we really strive to find people that are really heartfelt and value added, that they are trying to give more than they get. They're trying to leave more on the table and improve the community and the industry and the people that they interact with. And that really comes from the heart. That's their main motivation, to really help and encourage people.
Yeah, well, it's really pretty obvious when you train under one of the active self-protection people. It just is that it is what they believe, what, not just what they do, but it is who they are, and then it's what they do. So.
Yeah, it almost, like what is in the heart kind of spills out from the mouth and into your actions and everywhere else. And so, the people that we're involved with, they tend to just really lead with the heart and really believe strongly in what they're doing and helping people. And I love that we're all really passionate about self-defense, and that, self-defense being a human right and a civil right. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to us to help people with that.
No, and it shows. It's very, very obvious. So let's start with, how did you get involved with active self-protection? Because I understand that you got involved very, very, very early in the game.
Yes. So I got involved partially because I'd had an incident in my own life that made me think I needed to take self defense more seriously. I had been raised in a very stable, happy, while it wasn't a perfect environment, generally fairly idyllic. So the idea of this whole world of violence and risk was not part of my day to day, and that changed at some point. And I decided I needed to learn more about it. But I had a lot of little kids home at that point, and I didn't know even who to go to. There wasn't anyone in my sphere that was involved in self defense. I couldn't get out to do anything. I couldn't even really afford to do anything with 10 little kids or 5 little kids under the age of 10. I was homebound. So I started watching on the internet, reading everything that I could read, watching everything that I could
Mm-hmm.
watch. And at that time, Active Self Protection just had a Facebook page that John was running. I think it was about 40,000 people followed it at that point, and it was just getting to where it was unmanageable for him. And I was reading everything I could read, just absorbing it. And at that point, he kind of put out a call and said I could really use some help, just moderating comments and just stuff like that. So I contacted him and I said I know really nothing. I can't offer any value in that way, but I can. But I feel like as a pay it forward gesture, I'm in the comments. I can mom the comments and make sure people aren't, being disrespectful, or we moderated for profanity on YouTube, on Facebook, and
Mm-hmm.
I can do that. And I would love to learn more and keep doing that. And he, brought me on, and we hit it off fairly quickly, and just kind of grown together from there. At some point, he said, "You really need to start taking classes, become an instructor on your own right, and continue to learn and grow, because you're starting to gain a voice on the platform. And if you are going to be giving people instruction, you better know of what you speak." So
Mm-hmm.
that was 2013, 2014 when I started as just a volunteer. And the next year I started taking classes and becoming an instructor. And now I run the company. So
And now you run the company. So who did John Korea send you to for classes? Where did you get your training?
he said the first thing to start out with was getting your NRA instructor certification credentials. There really wasn't anything at that time of that we really knew was very valuable in our area. So start with the credentials. So I did that. There was a class. It was outside of Lincoln. There was a training company that was offering that. So we went and did that, and they were good. And that was that's an experience. As you know, Amanda, to show up in a class. It's not easy. And it wasn't easy for me at the time as a new person,
Mm-hmm.
because I thought everyone, I don't fit in here. This isn't my world, whatever. It's still not easy as Stephannie of Active Self Protection to show up in a class, as you probably know as well. Everybody wants to know, can she do it? Can she do it today? And frankly, there are days I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not ever easy to show up at a class. But we did that, and then we started kind of traveling around the country together and taking classes from people like Brian and Shelley Hill of the Complete Combatant, um, taking Gabe's White's classes. I learned a ton just helping John with classes at first before I was helping or teaching or even taking too many classes. I was doing sort of safety officer stuff for him.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn a ton by even just observing
Right.
classes. So just little by little. But yeah, I just started with my NRA instructor training credentials.
I'm telling you, that's it. I have the advantage of I have a sidekick, so whatever I do, I wrestle him into going along.
But,
So
right.
so that makes it a little easier, but it is tough to it's tough to start out and go because you know what you don't know, or you
Yeah.
don't know it.
No, you know nothing. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then on top of that, then once you get into the industry, then you're right, it gets harder because now you go to a
Hmm.
class and there's expectations of everybody. Well, she should know this and
Yes.
she should know that.
Yep.
And there's so
Yep.
many people who live in their mother's basement that already have
Hmm.
opinions that that they're
Oh
not
yeah.
out there doing it.
I say that all the time, that it's really easy to sit at home and assume that you have some level of competence and that you're a good shooter. I think there was a time when I did that. It's a lot harder to show up on Saturday morning on a firing line with a bunch of other people and know whether you can or not. And you will know. There will
Mm-hmm.
be holes in the paper at the end of the day that will let everyone know exactly what your skill level is that day.
Right.
That takes courage. And I love that people do that. And I love that,
Mm-hmm.
particularly women, I think, are willing not only are you showing up in a class and all the same pressures that men have, but very often you're showing up as one of the minority of women in a class, or very often the only woman in a class. And that takes some guts, that takes some backbone and fortitude.
It does. And you mentioned that, that day you may not have the skill and another day you may. So let's talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit.
Sure.
What do you mean?
Um, Well, I think just people being people, there are going to be days when you are on fire and you are going to be performing maybe even beyond what your skill level actually is. Everything's just going to align and you're going to look like a rock star. I've had those days where I've surprised myself and shut up and
Hmm.
went, heck yeah, and then
Look
you'd
at
like to
that.
say, oh, that's me. When even I know, I'm like, oh, that might be a little beyond what I could actually pull off on my average day. Then most days you're going to show up bringing the skill to bear that you have. You're going to show up exactly as you are. You're going to be able to be challenged at some points of the class and soar through other points of the class. And then other days, just like in life, you're going to fall and things just aren't going to be in your favor. You're going to have equipment failures, or you're mentally going to be struggling to be in the game, or just it's not there, or all of the above.
Hmm.
And you just that's, I guess, when you learn character and perseverance, and you
Right?
just keep going, because anybody that's gone to very many classes has also had that happen to them. I've been far enough into classes that when I've had those, that people have continued to be very supportive and understanding, and I can just say I have enough confidence in myself. I know I can shoot. Today's not my day, and that's okay. I'm going to learn. I'm going to
Right.
keep growing, and I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to be stronger emotionally at the end of this day than I was when I started it, I guess.
I guess that's it. I look at those days as the days that say I'm having the worst day, and this is just verification that all my safety skills are in line. So as
Yeah,
long as all the other stuff's going badly, and
yeah.
yet I'm still doing everything that I should and could on a safety
Hmm.
aspect, I'm like a winner, because your head is
Yeah.
in a completely different place. So I look at
Yep.
it as a challenge for that.
Absolutely. And yeah, those, if I felt like there was a point at which safety was an issue, I would pull myself out of the class.
Hmm.
But yeah, and even, what I'm talking about too is I think probably even on our worst days, or days when we're failing, you still would be effective from a self defense
Hmm.
perspective, very likely. It's the difference between having that really impressive target with the little tiny hole, and opening up or being slower
Hmm.
than some of the other people in the class. And so it's one of those things, when you practice enough and when you train enough, even your failures are going to be to a reasonable level. It might
Hmm.
not be what you want, but you're going to maintain that safety because it's so deeply ingrained into your practice that it's not
Yeah.
something you have to take a lot of mental resources to consider. You may not be thrilled with your performance, but you can perform, and I think that's something impressive in and of itself.
Yeah, and I think so. So, and I think if we look at it, even on a bad day, we're learning something, and we're
Mhm.
carrying that through. It's that a bad day on the range is not a bad day, right? It's way
It's
better
still,
than than.
yep, generally you're surrounded by your sidekicks, your friends, even if you're there on your own, you're generally learning something. So it's
Hmm.
a good day.
It is a good day. So so you took over and you are now the CEO of Active Self Protection. So many people have comments about the fact that it's an YouTube or internet company that you are not only supporting your family and John's family, you are supporting multiple families with this.
Yeah.
And they say it can't be done. Yet you guys are like rock stars showing that it can.
Yeah, and some of it is, we put out a lot of content. That's helpful. We strive really hard to put out compelling content, in my opinion, something that people want to look at and learn from and consume. We just try really hard to put out quality content.
Hmm.
We are limited in the revenue that we can make from YouTube. I know a lot of people talk about the censorship or their shadowing or whatever. Generally, I found if we follow the fairly simple guidelines, that we do okay. But we're always, because we're violent content, and we are, that we're going to have limited monetization, and that just means companies have to opt into that. So company A might say, yeah, I'm okay with violent content. Company B might not.
Mm-hmm.
So our ad pool is a little more limited. Um, so if that wasn't the case, we'd probably be doing quite well. But and some of it, you're at the whim of however well YouTube does with their own advertising partners. I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
bringing in the advertising partners on their side of it. But then we also have Neil does all of our marketing and stuff and brings along other business partners, so we're able to do that. But yeah, we support several different families, and we strive very hard to give back to the community, and we have several ventures that we lose quite a bit of money on or give quite a bit of money on because we feel that betters the community or betters like different charitable ventures. We have our
Mm-hmm.
conference that is 100% a fundraiser for the Flint Hills foster teen camps. So those things are important to us and part of our company values too. So yeah, we work hard at it, but it can be done.
Well, let's talk about that, the conference that you do, and so tell folks how they can participate. Does it sell out? How fast does it sell out? What are the chances of getting in? There's so many questions, so many.
It is one of my favorite things. So to learn more, you can go to our website, just activeselfprotection.com, and there'll be a link there. It's a little bit different getting registered for it because, like I said, this is 100% a fundraiser. Our company doesn't see a dime from this. So you register by following the link and making a donation of $600 to the Flint Hills Foster Teen Camps. They then let me know you're registered for the conference and I start planning it. The conference is 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, in Manhattan, Kansas at the beautiful Flint Hills Foster Teen Camps. It's this gorgeous camp area by a lake and cabins and just beautiful. We bring in top trainers from around the country. Some of the people that I talked about earlier, we've got several active self-protection staff. We've got Brian and Shelley Hill. We've got Karen Whitlock. We've got just tons of them. I'm going to forget people if I start listening.
Yeah.
We've got 4 live fire shooting ranges going all the time and 3 classrooms going all the time. So you can register and pick and choose what classes you have. If they're not sold out yet, there's dorm sleeping available, dorm style, summer camp style, free, first come, first serve. Several of the meals are included. Your breakfast and lunch are included in that price. And dinner, we do some of the dinners for $10 or $15. So, in my opinion, at $200 a day, potentially free sleeping, lots of meals included, this is it's the best deal in the training industry. $200 a day is
Mm-hmm.
is a totally fair price for a day of training. But yeah, all of that money goes to Flint Hills Foster Teen Camps. We can take about 100, just under 150. We're trying to push it through to this year because we have a 4th range. It isn't sold out yet, but we're about half there. So if people want to register, I would suggest doing that in the next couple of weeks to make sure you get a spot. I know the dorm style sleeping, I think the men's is sold out at this point, but they're, and by sold out I mean just taken up.
Mm-hmm.
Although there is a waiting list. Women's is probably still available, and I just love it. It's there's the training and the shooting, and in my opinion, that is first class. I mean, and you can. I'm very very biased. I mean, it's my
Mm-hmm.
baby, so I'm very biased on that. But it's fantastic training. But the fellowship, I think, is part of what makes it so special. We kind of colloquially call it bullets and Bibles, and why we try. We have people there from all faiths, but because the active self protection staff is in general all believers, when we get together, we would use this chance to worship. So we bring in, you're welcome to join us for that. So we start, John will do devotion time in the morning. We'll have a campfire service in the evening that, again, come and go as you please if you're interested in that. We have prizes and auctions, and we eat meals together as a big group. It's a great chance to get to know people from across the country. So it's my favorite weekend of every year. So I love it. It's also another thing I think is interesting. Last year we had about 30% female enrollment. So
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's huge. We also have a huge age, besides the gender, diversity, there's a lot of age diversity there too. So this definitely isn't just your, the joke is the old fat white guy crowd or whatever. It's not that. It's a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
from, like I say, all faiths, all genders, all beliefs. And so I really like that, from very, very new to very highly experienced shooters.
That's pretty cool. So when you say that there's some range and some classroom, how is it broken? Like in blocks of 2 hours, 4 hours? What's the?
Yeah, blocks 2 to 4 hours depending on the class. The ranges tend to be 4 hours. The classrooms are sometimes shorter, so you could do multiple classrooms in that block or take a break for that time frame. But
Hmm.
generally, yeah, there's four ranges and three classrooms going at any given time.
Well, I've had the pleasure of participating in training in some aspect with you, with Neil, your
Yeah.
husband, and with Brian Hill, and I have to say that just absolute class act trainers, and you guys are pretty darn amazing. When people ask me, I have to say that Brian Hill is probably the best person on human mechanics that I've
Yeah.
ever worked with, where he will be like, well, when you do this, this is what's happening. And so it's not just this is what I see, but this is why I see it and what you were doing. And it's just amazing to me how he can put that together.
He has an incredible gift, and it kind of makes, besides being one of my literally favorite people in the world, he really is. um, he's been studying different aspects of body mechanics since he was a child. He started taking and teaching martial arts even as a young teen, and beyond that he studied overseas. He was in Japan for a while. He learned different massage and different, everything about body stuff. He's
Mm-hmm.
interested in. He's also very well read, very intelligent. He's also one of those people that's able to almost look right into your soul at any given moment. It can be a bit unnerving if you're not used to it, and tell you why things are going wrong in that particular day.
Uh-huh.
Um, so he's really got a gift that way to really see you, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and let you know kind of what's holding you back. And I always have found that to be unnerving but helpful.
Unnerving. No, I think it's pretty amazing in just because you know that something's not right and you're trying to figure out exactly what, and he can just
Yeah.
he yeah. So I mean, I've been with a lot of different firearms instructors that to participate this way or that way, but he really kind of touches it on a kind of a different level. So,
Yeah, I was assisting him at an event, and everyone in the class was a really high end shooter. Several of them equal to Brian, if not exceeding Brian in his skill level. And watching him just study them and find these different, he talked about how he's studying them and watching for places that energy is bleeding off as it's recoiling and finding out why. And I'm like, I don't see what you are seeing. It's
right.
pretty, and being able to in a few moments make a correction that helps a really high end shooter. That's unusual. They
Mm-hmm.
generally go to classes, 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 and they either get ignored because they're shooting very, very well, and the
Right.
instructor isn't sure how to help them. But Brian just absolutely studied them and was able to give them something very valuable in a very short amount of time. It's an absolute gift. I love that we're able to have him on the channel every Monday morning to talk about, just talk. I Very few people get to speak for active self protection, and he's definitely one of them.
He's one of them. Now, is he on the mindset or is he on the extra?
Skill set on the extra
Oh,
channel every Monday
okay.
morning. Yep,
Yep.
and he's done it for. I mean, I don't know exactly. It's a couple of years for sure. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
exactly how long. So there's a couple hundred lessons, free 15-minute lessons from Brian Hill, and they're all, as you would imagine, outstanding.
Outstanding. Exactly. So so you've got that, then you have training. So you guys have classes different places, or you travel to places, or people travel to you. How does that all work for what you coordinate and organize?
Yeah, it's getting less and less, unfortunately, which is unfortunate because it's one of my favorite things to do. We used to be able to do it more, and to travel and train with John and Neil was just
Mm-hmm.
it was really, really great, a lot of fun. We used to be able to do 6 to 8 training things a year, and basically what that was you would go to a city, would be invited by a host, and they would fill a class. And then on Thursday night or Friday night, we would do that seminar that we talked about, lessons learned from analyzing however many gunfights. And then we did our class called Evidence Based Pistol, which is basically just all the really important skills that we learned from the night before. What's important in a defensive encounter? All of our time, all of our money, all of our resources are limited. So let's make sure we're spending them on something valuable. There's so many things that just we don't see in defensive encounters, like reloads. It's not something that we've seen a few of them, and none of in 30,000 gunfights. I think it's 3 now, and most of those were cops. Or this is private citizens, but they were off duty, so they were cops as private citizens, and they didn't affect the outcome of the gunfight. So while I think it makes a ton of sense to have an efficient and safe reload because you're going to be doing it a lot in class, do you want to spend hours and hours and hours from a defensive perspective practicing that? No, we don't. From competition, sure, practice that all day long. That's going to be important. But what's important defensively? And that's what that class is. At this point, we're only able to do a couple a year, so that's difficult for me. Otherwise, a lot of our weekends are taken up speaking at places like the NRA annual meetings and the USCCA convention, things like that. Whatever traveling we're doing for our own business, the conference, teaching at other conferences like the Girl with a Gun, the mingle that we were at together last year, Amanda. It seems like before you know it, 3/4 of the weekend of the year are taken up.
Yeah, I get it. I'm looking at something to try to schedule, and it was like, okay, I want October 1st. Oh no, that's Gun Rights Policy Conference. Okay, I want
Yep.
this day. Oh nope, and it just is like I had to go from October to the beginning of September to be able to fit something because there wasn't
Yeah.
anything behind. It was weird. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And it's
Yep.
great and it's horrible at the same time. It's a first world problem to be so involved and so busy that you're involved and busy.
Yeah. That's exactly it. I love everything that we're doing, and I only want to do more of it. But you're just limited by how much and by
Right.
how much time you have. So that's unfortunate. We do try to do at least a couple of training classes a year with some hosts so we can kind of get around the country. But it's getting more and more that if you want to train with us, it almost has to be at the conference. Is really what we're counting on now. Is a good weekend.
Is getting there to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I noticed, Stephanie, is that you're a woman. And
Yeah.
and you're the CEO of Active Self Protection. So how did that I know how it started, but how does people take that? And how did they take it in the beginning and how do they take it now?
Yeah, it's definitely an odd thing. I think people get very confused by the idea of John being the owner and major face of the organization. So how is he not running the company? Well, he's not running the business side of the company because, frankly, he doesn't have time to, and it isn't really where his gifts lie in that detailed, task-oriented stuff. So he hired me to do that. To business people, that makes a lot of sense. But to people that don't understand about business, they have a real discrepancy in the owner and someone running the company. Um, so that's different. Generally, people that I value take it really pretty well and understand it. I think a lot of it is very confusing to the commenters and stuff. It cracks me up different things like emails that I'll get. My name is spelled odd, as you can see. It's got 2 N's in it, Annie, rather than the traditional spelling of Stephanie. So my email is just Steph to avoid any of that. And so people make the assumption that that's short for Stephen quite a bit. So I'll get a lot of, and they'll change it even. Hey, Stephen, how's it going? Sir, brother, bro, this or that. And I'm like, really? Really?
Yeah, really? Yeah.
So that's really odd. So there's always little things like that, or the difference between how people treat you when they think you're a man versus when they think you're a woman. For a while, we were doing business we were helping the owners of Females with Firearms with their stuff for a while. And so that was John for a while as that voice, and the way people treated him or me versus whether they assumed we were a woman on Females with Firearms versus assuming we're a man on Active Self Protection was very eye opening.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah.
In my career, I've had them change my name to Aminata because they can't figure out how Amanda could be,
Right.
yeah. So,
Right. Must be something else.
It's
Yes.
got to be. I've mistaken that. Whatever that is. So
Yep. It's
who,
comical.
if you get to train with anybody in the country that you'd want to train with, that you'd want to take a class with, and pack up your bags and say I'm going away for a week or a weekend, and who would it
Hmm.
be? Who's on your list?
Someone that I have taken a class with or haven't. Does it matter?
It doesn't matter, but who do you want to? Or yeah.
We're going to go back to Brian Hill almost right away. He's a fantastic trainer. I've trained with him multiple times already with different classes. And if somebody said choose a weekend that you're going to go train, he would definitely be one that I would train with. Um, Gabe White's another really good one. I really enjoyed his class and spending time with him. I did take it. Pistol Shooting Solutions is that class, and that's an arduous class. It's very physical, and we took it in Phoenix. It was like 120 degrees. It was awful. So I know if I took that one again, I could learn a lot more. I'm trying to actively not die. Who I would like to take a class with and haven't yet. AJ Zito. He's out. He's in Arizona. He's more competition based, but we generally have him every year at the conference. So I've seen him teach, but I've not taken a class. Fantastic. We have some videos of his classes on our Active Self Protection Extra channel, so you can take bits of them for free. Tim Herron would be another one I would love to take
Hmm.
a class with and haven't been able to. My Neil's been able to and said that Tim is probably his favorite instructor that he's ever taken from. Just very passionate, very heartfelt, very gifted. You go away having learned more than you can even absorb. So they're very more competition focused. So I would definitely be, swimming underwater a little bit, trying to catch up. That isn't my world, but I would love to.
Oh, those are great. Those are great names.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I work actively every year to take one or two classes someplace
yeah,
across the country because I think that that's the only way that you're going to keep those skills honed and keep
yeah.
doing it. I mean, there's so many people. Ohio just passed their constitutional carry, and people are
Mm-hmm.
losing their minds because they're like, it's not mandated. They're not going to have to take training anymore. What are you going to do? And it's like, well, I'd gotten my concealed carry years ago, then
Mm-hmm.
got my instructor's license, and I still go take a class or two every
Yeah,
year, just
yeah,
just because you can't. If push comes to shove and you have to use your gun, you're gonna wish that you had thousands of hours of
yeah.
training, not whatever you have. So,
Yep, yep. Yeah, and it frustrates me, especially when instructors who are in Second Amendment people that should be about freedom and removing restriction would lobby for the idea of state mandated training because it's ludicrous. And if you get rid of that idea, you find the classes filling with people that are passionate to be there and really want to learn, and you can get beyond the basics of the state required CCW stuff into
mm-hmm,
more specialized areas. And Ohio's a great place. Isn't like Greg Ellifritz up in that area? He would
mm-hmm.
definitely be on my list of someone I would give my right arm to train with. He hasn't traveled much while he was working, and I didn't make it up that way. So
Yeah,
I've been in classes with him, but I haven't taken any from him. So
mm-hmm.
he would, yeah, I'm jealous because you've got a lot of stuff going on in that area.
Yeah, we really do. So Rob and I try to challenge each other every
Mm-hmm.
year to do something a little different, and so
Mm-hmm.
we have Camp Perry also. So one of the challenges was to participate in the national matches, and so
Mm,
so it's like,
that's
okay, here we
awesome.
go. We're gonna do this. I'm like, I have
That's
no idea
awesome.
what
I
I'm
love
doing.
that. Yeah, I wouldn't
So
either. I love that. It's really
yeah,
cool.
it was fun,
And you
and
guys were
then
in my
pardon.
I was saying you guys were in my neck of the woods for Mag 40 last year. I wasn't able to take that class, but Neil and Natalie were there. I've taken that
Right.
class before. Another fantastic one that people should be considering, if especially if they haven't taken much and can't take much. It's expensive, but boy, is it a week of here's everything you need to know to carry guns successfully class.
Well, I mean, there are some instructors, and I hate to sound like this, that I'm looking at these instructors on my bucket list, and then I look at their ages and I rank them based on age, so that I don't ever get timed out, if you know what I mean. So I want
I
to make
do know
sure
what
that
you
I
mean.
never miss those opportunities.
Hmm. Yep. And yeah, that in fact, that's one reason we had been really wanting to do Masada Ayub's Deadly Force Instructor, and we weren't getting it worked out and weren't getting it worked out. And finally, we're like, guys, there's a timer on this. If we're going to do it, we've got to do it. Mas has earned his retirement at this point, and it's going to
Right.
happen at some point.
Right.
So we decided we got enough students together and brought him to us. That's what we did.
Well, and
In that, but
it makes so much sense because,
mhm,
the the guys and gals that are really good
mhm,
because they've spent years honing those
yeah,
skills.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and so they don't get any younger, and one of these days they're going to win the lottery and go off and be a beach bunny in Bimini, and we're going to lose
Mhm.
out on that, you know.
Yeah, just buckets and buckets of knowledge and experience. It's almost, like that previous generation when grandma's gone, the stories are gone, the experience is gone, that heritage almost. So to be able
Mhm.
to sit under some of the instructors that really changed things, it, it's very cool. You almost
Yeah.
see like literally your heritage. Some of them understanding. Oh, this is where this came from. This is why I teach what I do, or whatever is very interesting.
Right, right. There is that. I mean, I had the pleasure of taking a class with Kathy Jackson, and
I
then
never did.
and she's retired, and I mean, her presentations are so good that I quote her still
Yeah.
with the this was the day that nothing happened
Hmm.
because of the preparedness, and it's like that is such a good statement right there, you
Yeah,
know.
I think if Kathy wasn't retired when I first started getting into it, she was shortly thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
But her body of work and her influence on the industry absolutely like mentored me probably isn't the correct word because there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a personal relationship, but it was so impactful. It was the ripples that her work, her just openness, authenticity, just way with words. It was just masterful, and I still see the ripples from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that too. So you have an entire family that is included in the active self protection circle now, because there's
Yeah.
you now, and then what, year and a half ago you brought your husband in so that you guys
Hmm.
both went all in, and
Yeah.
then your
Yeah.
daughter's involved. So tell folks what that's like.
Yeah, we had brought Neil in. He was always working at his day job, as a lot of us have had to do. And about a year and a half ago, he just went straight active self protection. But he was working with us before that. We really needed some help with marketing, and that was Neil's background. And there isn't anybody in the world that I trust or value more than him. So I'm like, let's let him do some stuff for us. And of course, he's taken it off from there and done fantastic. Natalie is my youngest daughter. I have five kids. My son is my youngest child, but she's my youngest daughter, and she's just one of those kind of bright and bubbly people. As you've met her, um, she she's learning about shooting. I mean, she's only been at this about a year, and went to some classes and did some things, and decided she really likes it. So we thought, why don't we put her on the channel? In fact, it started. I was supposed to go teach at a class, and I woke up. This was in the throes of COVID. Like COVID was bad at this point. Nobody knew what to do, and I woke up with 100% allergies, but I was coughing, and I'm like, I look a mess. They're never going to let me on a plane like this, even though I know it's not COVID. So they needed an extra assistant. So Neil went and woke up Natalie and said, "Hey, can you come be range monkey for us? You can hang targets, you can run errands, you can do this or that, but the class is too big for just John and I." So she jumped up, got on a plane, and went. And she left with some of her preconceived notions about what the community was kind of challenged and changed. She expected to show up as a young woman in the class and to see a lot of misogyny and sexism and problems there, or to see arrogant people or judgy people. And she said she didn't see any of that. She felt that the students that were there wanted her to win as much as she did. She could enjoy when they were successful. They enjoyed when she was successful. And she just said she found what she felt was a community that accepted her, and that she enjoyed. So she started pursuing it from there. And we said, well, we should do a video series on this. This is kind of cool to see somebody go from, hey, I just showed up at class one day to hang targets
Mm-hmm.
and jumped on the line a few times to learn, to now she's going to become an instructor. And she's not 21 yet, so at some point she'll be able to do that. So we decided to call it the Chronicles of the Range Monkey. So we have a video with the chronicles of our little range monkey, Natalie, once a week on the Active Self Protection Extra channel. And she's a character. She's the kind of people we should be reaching in order to ensure and expand our civil rights as far as the Second Amendment goes.
Oh, that's so true. Because I tell parents a lot, that parents and grandparents, it's like if you don't reach out to your children, if you don't reach out to your grandchildren, if you don't train them and educate them, and they don't see the value in firearms, we're one generation away from losing all of those rights.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so they're going to be the future congressmen and senators and decision makers all over the place. And don't
Yep.
you want some involvement in the forming of those people into people that you want to be?
Yeah. I mean, even I, as young as, my early and mid 20s, if you'd asked me why we had gun rights in America, I would have told you for hunting and sport. That's why that's why the Second Amendment is important. And obviously, as I've continued to learn and educate myself, even as a young woman, well before I got in the self defense industry, it's like, wait a minute, that's not exactly right. Even from the context of what was happening, they didn't really need it enshrined in the Constitution that for hunting rights. They didn't need even self-protection enshrined in the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
That went without saying. The guns were to protect us from tyranny from the government. And I think that society and the media tends to try to spin those messages because they're uncomfortable messages. Certainly, nobody wants to talk about that really or think about
Right.
that. But it's the truth. And if the people don't have some sort of limiting factor on the government, that's a bad day. All governments, ours included, have fairly storied past. Unfortunately, there's plenty of examples of corruption even throughout our own history that you have to have some limiting factor. And if you don't teach your kids why that is, it's really easy to kind of buy into some of what the mainstream media wants to sell.
Oh, there's so much of that. And then I have to say that when you look at what's happening in the Ukraine right now, I mean, not to pull
Mm.
politics into it, but the Second
Right.
Amendment aspect of politics is that everybody's cheering on the private citizens that got their own firearms and are
Yeah.
standing guard in their own communities. And then
Yeah.
our president did, and then at the same time in the same speech came back and said, and we're going to limit your gun rights.
Yeah.
Wait,
I
what?
think
Yeah.
there's this disconnect in all of us that would like to think, well, that can't be us. That's somewhere
Mm-hmm.
far away, and that doesn't happen here in our country. And we don't realize in a grand historical perspective, it absolutely could. This is a very young country, and I mean, look at what's happened to us as a country in 2 years' time, for heaven's sakes, from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the COVID and the pandemic, and how much things in the economy and the job markets and everything have changed, and how it could have changed even more drastically with just a few little changes. It doesn't take very much to destabilize a whole lot of things. And I think young kids, Natalie's age and older even, they
Mm-hmm.
lack that real historical perspective, that place. Where are we in history, and how does that relate to other things? I know I did at that age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that they say that if you're not liberal when you're 20, you don't have a
Mm-hmm.
heart. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
not conservative by the time you're a grandparent, you don't have a brain,
Right.
right? And there's some
Right.
there's something. I mean, and I think we all evolve in some aspect, looking at what is
Yeah.
what is critical and what is important to us, and
Yeah.
how do we embrace our families and our country, and all of that. And
Right.
I think the Second Amendment ties so much into it, and they want to separate it, and I'm not sure I
Mhm.
understand fully why they want that separation.
Yeah, I mean, I think so many people don't look at it as the civil right that it actually is, and again, like not to change things around or bring it more political than it has to be, but the last couple of years we've seen fairly controversial people on each party elected that the other side was concerned
Mm-hmm.
about, and I feel like that's when you should want to say, this is why we need to limit power. This is why the Second Amendment is so important, so that we can protect and defend ourselves and draw boundaries when people that don't like us are in power. And there was
Mm-hmm.
a lot of belief that, okay, this president doesn't like this group of people, or that president doesn't like that group of people. That's why these rights are important. That's why they're civil rights, and the Second Amendment is a civil right for everyone. Self defense is a human right.
Right. Well, recently there was a video, state of Arizona, where a state senator, told one of the gals from Arizona's. She was wearing a DC Project shirt, so obviously she's connected with the DC Project, and he told her, well, if you're fearful when you're out and about, you don't need a gun. Just stay home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's egregious. I mean, that literally is limiting. So now we're going to limit your other rights. We're going to limit your freedom. We're going to limit and I have a son with some significant special needs. So access and things like that, and the idea that he should be able to have a life with as much liberty and freedom as he can. Of course, it's very, very clear to us because we have to sometimes fight for that. I don't think it's maybe as clear to other people that, yeah, that it's just egregious, the idea that, well, instead of empowering you to make sure that you're okay, to protect and defend your boundaries because you're valuable, just stay home. That's a terrible message to send to people.
Yeah, exactly. And your statement, it's because you're valuable. I mean, because human our personal defense is not about going out and looking for trouble. It
No.
is about being able to go home all
Yeah.
alive and healthy and whole if trouble comes to
Yeah.
you.
Absolutely. It's and I look at it again, not to put my worldview on anyone's because I don't think you need this, but I believe that humans were created in the image of God, and therefore they're precious. They're of inestimable value and dignity and worth. And even if you don't believe that's why they are, people are. They're just valuable. They're more valuable than things. Um, they're just of the highest value, all of them. And so it's a good, it's a moral good to protect and defend that innocent life because it is so valuable. Um, and I think people miss that sometimes. They get caught up in the idea that, okay, somebody put a gun at me and wanted my money. Why would I want to, shoot them over $20 or whatever it is? No, it's not that. It's that he threatened to murder me. He had a gun pointed at me. My life was in danger. I could care less about the $20, but
Mm-hmm.
my life is valuable. And some people, they just don't see that. They see it as a robbery over money, not a threat, um, and an assault against something valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the serious bodily harm or death portion of it,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he's not poking you with a stick. He is
right, right,
pointing something that is lethal at you,
right.
and you don't know if you're going to survive this encounter. If it were
You
just
don't. And
about money, then that would be a robbery. Come when I'm not home.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
that I'm inviting you to my house to come when I'm not home, but you get what I mean.
right, right. And I think people think because I'm a good person, if I told you, hey, if you give me the money, I won't kill you, that they are putting that on the other person, on the bad guy in this scenario. And it was, the late Dr. William April that said they don't think like you do. And we
Mm-hmm.
have video after video of people that have been completely compliant in armed robberies like that and have been killed anyway. They're, you can't put a bunch of trust and ethic on someone that's literally threatening to murder you if you don't do what they say. That should put them in the camp of untrustworthy at that point.
Right from the
And
start, yeah.
yeah, don't
It,
trust the felon because
ex-
they're engaging in
exactly.
felony selection, right?
They have this whole set of rules and laws that say don't
Right.
do this, don't do this, don't do this, and yet there's a group of people who believe more laws are the answer because
Yeah.
those laws
Yeah.
didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And we just, I mean, we see over and over again that that for a certain segments of people that laws are
Mm-hmm.
really irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Rules are irrelevant. Even just social conventions, it doesn't matter. They're predators. They're criminals. They will do what they want. Sometimes they don't even care about the repercussions of the law. They just want what they want in that moment. Maybe they even
Mm-hmm.
have and they're enough disordered that they're thinking that they're not even thinking about tomorrow. They want what they want right now.
Mm-hmm. I think there's that, and I also think that there is a spot where they can't value your life because they
Right.
don't value their own life. And so if
Yeah,
they
that's
don't
true.
value themselves, they can't value anybody else that's in their circle or that touches their
Yeah.
circle.
Yep. And we always talk about how, and at some level, it doesn't matter. You don't have to figure out what their motivation is or why they're doing it or whether or not they will live
Mm-hmm.
up to their word and let you go if you give them what they want. All you know is that they are threatening to kill you, and you have the right to stop that. You have the right to life. You have the right to liberty, right to pursuit of happiness, all of those. And so if you have the ability and the means to stop that, you can.
Okay.
And I would argue that as a moral good that you should.
That you should. That you yeah, so you have a responsibility to your family, to your loved ones, that that
Right.
family unit is held together by the glue that is you. And
Mm-hmm.
so by it's not just your life that you're potentially offering up or giving up. It is
Mm-hmm.
the life of that entire family unit and the life as they know it. You're going to change it all
Right.
because you're not willing to to go that extra stand, take that extra training, be
Mm-hmm.
that extra prepared, whatever that step is.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we talk about, it was Uncle Ben, I think, that said, with great power or rights comes great responsibility from Spider-Man. And it's true, though. We fight and we maintain that we want no restrictions on these rights, and there shouldn't be. And I don't want the government telling us how we should live out those rights responsibly. But as a community, we should be living out those rights responsibly. I don't want
Mhm.
to have to use my gun in self-defense and not know if I can hit what I'm aiming at. And then if I don't and I end someone else's life, how is that okay?
Mhm.
I have we have incredible rights that no one in the history of the world has had. We have in this country. And so we should assume that that comes with a huge amount of responsibility to be safe, to be knowledgeable, to be competent, to not be a danger to yourself or others. And frankly, if you're carrying a gun, there's a non-zero chance of danger. You have to know how to do that, how to do it
Mhm.
safely. And it isn't necessarily as easy as seeing an ad for a holster on Facebook and buying that and assuming all is well and good. You don't learn some of that without taking classes because I think it's a reasonable assumption. Hey, this company wouldn't sell a dangerous product, not when it comes to firearms. I think that's a reasonable assumption, and yet it's wrong. I see egregiously dangerous products scroll through my feed all the time, but you don't necessarily find that out on your own unless you're involved in expanding your knowledge in classes and learning about what works and why.
No, I think you're right. And then there's things where even if it's not a dangerous holster, it may
Right,
be for you because this
right.
holster may fit your body style, but it won't fit mine. This,
Yep,
I can draw from here, but I can't draw from there. All of that stuff requires practice and
right.
time and work and trials. And we all have a big pile of holsters that we thought looked good,
Yep, yep.
and now they don't.
Yeah, and luckily, there seems like there's so many more resources available now to shortcut that process a little bit. So many really high quality Facebook groups and
Mm-hmm.
experts that are really telling you what products are good and how and where to spend your money. But yeah, I bought a lot of garbage, and in one hand, I guess it's good because with every $50 I spent on a holster, I learned a lesson about why that holster wasn't great, and I wouldn't do that again. And yeah, there's definitely a difference between like dangerous, and there are literal dangerous bad products out there. Then there's also suboptimal, where if you show up in my classes, I'm not going to have a problem with the fact that you have that holster on or whatever. I'm going to probably show you what some of the issues are with it. And honestly, probably by the end of the class, you're going to realize it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
but it's just suboptimal. It's fine. It's just not the best. So you may decide, next year when you've saved up, maybe you want to replace it. But if we can shortcut that a little and save a few $100s for people, I think
Right.
that's great.
And show them what they're looking for and why
Yeah,
they're looking for it. And
yeah,
so these are the
yeah,
things to consider, all of that in that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we do the Conceal Carry Fashion Show, to show
yeah,
people
yeah.
what they can't see. Because
Hmm.
everybody, when I first started training, people were like, well, what do you carry and how do you carry it? And I'll do that. Okay, you're five
Yeah,
foot two and I'm 5'9".
right.
We're not the same. And so let's talk about why we're not the same and how we're not the same and the different considerations that should happen.
Sure. Yeah, that's absolutely it. We're not all starting from the same place. We don't all have the
Hmm.
same priorities, and there's a lot of options. And actually, even now, more than 5 years ago,
Hmm.
there's so many great options out there for people that if you spend a little bit of time getting educated, and just learning, you can save yourself a whole lot of aggravation and heartache and money,
Hmm.
um, in the long run.
Right. So do you do any of the dry firing things? Do you have any of the dry firing gear? What are the
Yeah.
things that you do?
So for like gear, one of the biggest things for me is to have something to safely make your gun inoperable when you're dry firing. So we have a Facebook group. It's called the Ask Dry Fire Challenge that anybody can join. So it's great. Come and join. The answer to the question is Mantis, but frankly, I don't care if you have the right. I just want to know that you're not a bot when you come. But in this group, we've really encouraged a lot of dry fire, and we do challenges every month and prizes. It's a lot of fun. But because so many people are dry firing, I've heard from a significant amount of people who have had negligent discharges while they are
Hmm.
dry firing. So for me, it is absolutely essential that you have a backstop that will stop a bullet. You can't just be
Hmm.
shooting willy nilly at anything. Your backstop has to stop a bullet. So we are. I shoot at the wall in my basement. But another thing that I really like is something as simple as a barrel block, which is a piece of orange plastic, basically, that sticks out
Hmm.
of the end of the gun, and you put it in your magazine. You can visually see it by thinking it's not hidden inside the gun; it sticks out the end. And right there, you just know, okay, this gun is disabled. So if you don't have that backstop, the perfect backstop, you still want to continue to practice all those gun safety rules. You don't want to be pointing at people, but if you have a wall that's just not going to stop a bullet, a bullet can't go into the gun like that. I think those are really important. Then there's a couple other things that you don't need, but they can almost gamify the dry fire. So when I started dry firing, I didn't know exactly what to do. I didn't know,
Hmm.
I'm just click, 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 what are we doing here? I don't understand. So there's tools like the Mantis, which is you hook that onto your gun and it gives you a bunch of different measurements and scores and benchmarks. And I think it gives particularly the novice shooter enough feedback that they're able to really make leaps and bounds in their dry fire. Then it's not necessary, but I think it really shortcuts that process. And for for high end shooters, it has a lot of really cool stuff like recoil meters and how fast am I touching my gun, even what's the difference between the beep and when I hit my gun. So you can break down all the different steps of your gun presentation, and so those are pretty handy. Um, then our videos on Monday, again, they're free, so I think it's a great resource. It's almost always a gun lesson. A lot of it is dry fire stuff, so we'll have a different challenge that week to go in and try this or and do that. I think it's a great way for people that aren't quite sure what's. It's more than just pulling your trigger while you're watching the gun. You can really
Hmm.
do everything in dry fire, practice everything in dry fire except manage recoil, and that's a pretty small piece of it. It really is. As a new shooter, I did not believe that. As a higher end shooter, that's absolutely true. The recoil is a very small piece, and you can do transitions, you can do reloads, you can do speed and accuracy, all of these things in dry fire. So it's pretty cool.
And in today's era of ammo and the prices and the availability, to be able to
Yeah,
hone your skills without that expense
yeah.
is another bonus.
It's huge. It's huge. And I don't think that's going to I know it's getting better right now, but I think as a general rule, we're just going to, well, we've seen these spikes over and over and
Mm-hmm.
over again throughout the industry. That is never going to change. But with so much instability right now, I'm surprised they're actually not shooting up a little higher than they are. But
Right.
yeah, that's another thing with, like, you look at the Mantis and you're like, no, you don't need it. I mean, we're sponsored by them. They pay us every month, and I'm the first one to tell you, you don't really need it. It's $100, and you don't need it. And yet also, you can really shortcut that process, and I feel like that $100 is a really $150, whichever one you get, is a really good investment. And in fact, Mantis are not about 80%, 75 to 80% of your practice should be dry fire. In fact, even with today, with the ammo prices and the climate, I'd say you find with 90% of your practice, go can
Mm-hmm.
practice, do almost everything in dry fire, and then go verify in live fire now and again.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Well, Stephannie, I want to thank you very much for joining me on Women for Gun Rights. This was an amazing conversation, and
Oh,
we've
my
zoomed
pleasure.
clear through an hour, and
Wow.
so, so
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here. I enjoy talking about this stuff. So,
oh, it is so great. Is there anything you want to leave our listeners with as an exit to the show?
if I had to leave with anything, I would say that just what we talked about earlier, that you are valuable. You're worth fiercely protecting and defending, and you're worth doing that effectively. You want to be a benefit to yourself, rather than a detriment. And it isn't nearly as hard as you might think when you first get in. It's fairly simple with a little bit of work to become competent and effective and accurate, carrying and using your handgun. And I would encourage everybody to do it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So, folks, Stephannie Weidner from Active Self Protection, go to their website, look them up, watch some of the videos, get some of the training. You will find out that it is a wormhole that you will spend a lot of time in, because you'll get in there and you'll just keep going.
That'd be
Okay,
great.
so we'll see you all next week. So thanks for tuning in for Women for Gun Rights.
Thanks, Amanda.
This is Women for Gun Rights with your host, Amanda Suffolk, part of the DC Project.
Okay, there we go.
We did it.